guys kind of bear with me. For all intents and purposes, this is something that I started about 2 years ago. My wife and I were visiting on one of our fun road trips. And it was really important to me that she get a chance to come here and see McPherson's and Van and Mike. And yeah, so I did write it down, partially because, you know, what did I write down? So I wrote down to stay on point, stay focused. As many of you know that have heard my story, I tend to ramble, tend to go off on tangents. So this is to help keep me on point, and then also to follow Mike's example and speak with purpose, because that's exactly what he did. And also so that I have some small hope of maintaining my military bearing. So, yes, this is my letter to Mike, but since there's a special piece of Mike in each of you, it's also my way of telling you guys the impact you have. So, let me start. So, a man of few words is not something that you could say though. Especially not growing up. That's not to say that he talked incessantly, unnecessarily, or to excess. Though his loving wife may have disagreed from time to time when there was a schedule to keep and places to go. No, when Mike spoke, as many of you may know, there was purpose. Be it recounting an unbelievable personal story, telling a joke, giving an exhaustive account of any number of historical events. When Mike started in, we all listened. I put emphasis on that word for a reason, because when most of us are listening to someone, we are all too often waiting for our chance to speak, but not with Mike. That come from.
You want someone to say it?
No, okay. Appreciate it. Mike wouldn't just speak. Mike would hold court. And we would truly listen. Mike was a larger-than-life presence, and while he certainly commanded respect in just about any room he entered, I never saw him demand it. Except perhaps when his kids would get out of hand. Without trying, Mike was more often than not the most respected man in just about any room he walked into. As a father and a husband, Mike seemed to excel in just about every way possible, in part producing and raising some of the best friends I've ever had. I mean, I did fly across the country, so, you know. For those of you that don't know. As a result of this, the McPherson household was pretty much the place to be on the weekend, especially after church and probably the best of both parties. While Mike was a firm man that would not hesitate to hold his children and any of us that were tagging along to account, there was always love in that house. Yes, lots of risk, Axis and allies, command and conquer was thrown too, but there was always love. Now, to explain just what and how much Ian Carroll meant to me, I have to explain a little bit about young Ryan. John, get up.
These guys are our sons.
So young Ryan was not the strong, confident, dashing, and passively eloquent man you see before you today. No, young Ryan was decidedly more scrawny, awkward, lacked proper timing in just about every respect, and crossed lines until he was tripping over them, to which Mike just about held him to serious account just once, but we'll get to that later. As such, it meant the world that I was so often welcomed into this house. Yeah, you know, kind of. It meant the world that I was often welcomed to this house by this family as the aforementioned winning traits that occasionally made me a difficult friend to bear. Even more than this was all the trips and events that I was invited to. But none more life-altering than the road trip on the summer between junior and senior year. Partially thanks to the fact that James was gone. So thank you for being gone. We had room. Yes, it was awesome. So it was me, Will, Mike, Carol. It was awesome.
You're welcome.
I mean, I already had an interest in history, right? You know, I had some really good teachers, but the way Mike was able to bring it to life when we were in forts and battlefields, well, it ignited in me a deep love, passion, and appreciation for history. And the stories we tell that would shape the kind of man that I want to be. He was exceedingly patient with the goofy short attention span that I had, though I did just about find his line just once. See, when some of us get too big to spank, we cross into a magical land where we can no longer have to fear physical punishment. This was not the case for Will and James. It was very nearly not the case for me once. It was bedtime, and for what I'm sure was a completely ridiculous and uncalled for reason, I could not and would not stop laughing. There was a number of warnings for me to stop, because it was bedtime, when suddenly there was a hand on my leg. And it was Mike leaning forward, and clenched fist up at the ready, giving me one final warning before he deployed the dreaded Charlie horse. Yes, that too. It would have been a very dead leg. Whether it was Will warning me the danger that I was now in, or perhaps the slight grin and gleam in his eyes showing me that this was no warning, but a promise, I was finally able to stop. I've gone over all the ways that Mike stood out to me in his storytelling, his humor, his command of a let the bugs in here. Strength, confidence, discipline, and the type of father he was, not just to his own children, but to each one of us that was invited to that house. There was just something about him that drew you in, and you couldn't help but want a piece of that. And while there are many things that made him the man he was, one of the biggest that I saw was a title that he had earned and held such pride in, United States Marine. As a result of this, and of the path that my good friend James took, because if he could do it, how hard could it be?
Low standards.
It was hard, as I found out. In the summer of 2001, I started talking to a Marine recruiter, and in October 2001, I went to MCRD San Diego and earned myself that same title. This is why it is so fitting that I stand here today, having literally just come from a long week of hard military training in Indiana. Sorry, Mike, I went to the National Guard. To talk to all of you about just how much of an outsized impact Mike McPherson had on my life. Because it's the strength, resilience, and self-discipline I saw in him that eventually James, that helped get me through those most difficult moments and helped make me the man that I am today. I'm almost there, I promise. I would not be nearly the man I am today without him. And I am, so many of you are, so much better for having known him. And that's my quest.